History shows that power rarely disappears. It adapts. When one method becomes costly, unpredictable, or ineffective, power migrates to a quieter form. For centuries, dominance was measured in territory and armies. Conflict was visible. Outcomes were decided on battlefields. Victory was announced through conquest. But as economic systems grew more interconnected, the effectiveness of traditional warfare declined. Modern economies are not isolated machines. They are networks. Disrupt one node too violently and the damage spreads back to the attacker. Supply chains fracture, markets seize, alliances strain. The cost of visible conflict rises faster than its benefit. This is not a moral evolution. It is a structural one. History shows that when systems become complex enough, force loses precision. It becomes blunt. Collateral damage outweighs strategic gain. The result is not peace, but substitution. Power doesn't vanish when war becomes inefficient. It changes instruments. Instead of tanks, leverage. Instead of occupation, dependency. Instead of invasion, pressure applied through rules, access, and timing. This shift did not happen overnight. It emerged gradually as economic integration made overt conflict less useful. As global trade expanded, so did the incentives to avoid disruption. Stability became a shared interest, even among rivals. But stability does not eliminate competition. It relocates it. History shows that as military dominance became constrained, financial dominance became decisive. Control over currency, trade routes, settlement systems, and capital flows offered something armies could not: influence without visibility. Economic pressure works because it is ambiguous. It can be denied. It can be framed as policy. It can be justified as regulation or risk management. Unlike war, it does not require public consensus or dramatic escalation. This is why modern power avoids visible conflict. Visibility invites resistance. Quiet leverage invites compliance. A tariff here, a licensing delay there, a subtle change in access to capital. None of these look like aggression. Each appears technical. Together, they reshape behavior. History shows that the most effective forms of control are the least theatrical. They operate through incentives rather than force. They alter choices rather than impose outcomes. This is where many observers become confused. They look for conflict where none appears. They expect power to announce itself. When it doesn't, they assume it has weakened. But the absence of visible conflict does not signal the absence of struggle. It signals a change in terrain. Modern power understands that destroying an opponent's economy openly is costly and destabilizing. Guiding it quietly into constraint is cheaper and more sustainable. This is the transition from military dominance to financial leverage. It is not about winning battles. It is about shaping conditions, about defining what is possible, affordable, or accessible, about influencing outcomes without triggering reaction. History shows that once power learns this lesson, it rarely returns to older methods unless forced. The battlefield does not disappear. It dissolves into systems. Power didn't disappear. It changed form. History shows that once power migrates away from visible conflict, it does not retreat. It embeds itself in structure. Markets, currencies, and trade systems become the terrain where outcomes are decided long before politics reacts. This is not because markets are neutral. It is because they are efficient carriers of pressure. Control over trade routes once required fleets and forts. Today, it requires standards, clearing mechanisms, and access permissions. Control over currency once required conquest. Now it requires trust, settlement dominance, and reserve acceptance. This pattern has appeared before. When force becomes costly, leverage becomes attractive. Economic pressure works slowly, but it compounds. It reshapes incentives without provoking immediate resistance. Those affected often adjust voluntarily, believing the change to be temporary or technical. History shows that economic pressure is more effective than violence because it preserves the appearance of choice. Actors are not ordered to comply. They are guided toward compliance by cost. Options narrow. Alternatives become expensive. Over time, behavior changes without confrontation. Markets make this possible because they translate power into numbers rather than commands. A shift in credit availability, a change in settlement preference, a redefinition of acceptable collateral. Each adjustment is defensible on technical grounds. None requires dramatic justification. Together, they decide outcomes. In multiple historical cases, markets resolved conflicts before political institutions acknowledged them. Trade flows redirected, capital withdrew or concentrated, industrial capacity relocated. By the time formal decisions were made, the underlying balance had already changed. This is why political reaction often appears slow or disconnected. It is responding to effects, not causes. Economics moves first because it operates continuously. Politics moves later because it operates episodically. History shows that this gap is where outcomes are locked in. The calm appearance of markets during these phases is deceptive. Stability does not mean neutrality. It often means alignment has already occurred. Volatility is low because uncertainty has been resolved quietly, not because risk is absent. This is why observers waiting for visible disruption miss the transition entirely. The new battlefield does not produce explosions. It produces spreadsheets. It produces revised terms. It produces compliance framed as rational adjustment. By the time people notice, the decision is already made. History shows that when power operates through systems rather than force, failure becomes difficult to recognize. There is no moment of rupture, no clear declaration. What appears instead is confusion. Modern collapses feel sudden not because they are abrupt, but because they are obscured. When pressure is applied economically, its effects arrive unevenly. Some sectors feel strain early, others appear untouched. Indicators send mixed signals. Growth in one area masks contraction in another. This fragmentation delays recognition. Societies accustomed to visible conflict expect visible warning. They look for headlines, emergencies, and decisive events. When these do not appear, weakness is reclassified as noise. Temporary slowdown, market correction, policy adjustment. Each explanation preserves the belief in continuity. History shows that this is the danger of waiting for confirmation from headlines. By the time collapse becomes narratively obvious, it has already become structurally unavoidable. Economic systems rarely fail because of a single shock. They fail because flexibility has been exhausted quietly. Redundancy has been removed. Optionality has been traded for efficiency. When stress finally concentrates, there's nowhere left to absorb it. This is why modern collapses feel confusing. They do not follow the expected script. Institutions still function. Markets may still trade. Daily life continues until it doesn't, and even then, not everywhere at once. The invisibility of collapse is not accidental. It is the result of efficiency. Systems optimized to transmit pressure smoothly also transmit failure smoothly. Without spectacle, without interruption, without warning that feels proportional. History shows that societies often misinterpret this phase as resilience. The absence of crisis is taken as proof of strength. In reality, it is often proof that adjustment has been deferred, not avoided. What matters is not whether weakness exists, but whether it is recognized while adaptation is still possible. The difference between surviving a collapse and understanding it lies here. Survival depends on reaction after recognition. Understanding depends on reading systems before recognition is forced. History does not require awareness to proceed. It does not punish ignorance actively. It simply continues its sequence until constraints assert themselves. Empires no longer fall with fire and noise. They dissolve into reconfiguration. Influence shifts. Control changes hands. Stability reappears elsewhere, efficiently, quietly. Empires don't fall loudly anymore. They fall efficiently.